jangan komentar sebelum tonton video ini sampai habis ya.
We can ask a much more reasonable question. Where and how did Jesus claim to be God? In the Old Testament, we find that God will not share his glory with anyone. God says in Isaiah 42, verse 8, I am the Lord, that is my name. I will not give my glory to another. Clearly, no prophet is going to say that he will be glorified with God, let alone that he had glory with God before the world was created. But in John 17, verse 5, Jesus says, Now, Father, glorify me together with yourself, with the glory which I had with you before the world was. Is this the sort of thing prophets say? What Jesus claims in Matthew 25, where he says, in verses 31 to 32, But when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them from one another, as the shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. Jesus goes on to say that he will admit certain people to heaven and cast others into hell. Isn't this something only God can do? Why would a mere prophet say something like that?
Yesaya 42 ayat yang ke-8 berbunyi, Ani Yahweh Husmi, Ukfodil akhir lo eten utilati lapsilim. Artinya, akulah Yahweh, itulah namaku, dan aku tidak akan memberikan kemuliaanku kepada yang lain, dan pujianku kepada patung.
Peter, according to Acts 10:25, Peter, as he was coming in, quote, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and worshipped him. In 1 Samuel 25:23, Abigail fell on her face before David and bowed down to the ground, again, worshiping him, using the same word. 2 Kings 4:37 speaks of a woman who fell at Elijah's feet, bowed down to the ground. Genesis 50:18, 2 Samuel 19:18. They describe similar events. Obviously, again, this was custom. It was custom to pay homage to a righteous and pious individual, especially to a prophet. If they worshipped him, why didn't they pray to him? But prayer was reserved to God and to God alone. So, to begin with, if we ask Christians, why do you feel that Jesus Christ was divine? What was it that he did or said or was that makes you believe he was divine? A lot of Christians will say, well, look at the miracles he performed. Miracles was one of the ways in which our Creator showed the prophet to be a prophet to the people to whom he was sent. If we think of biblical miracles, we think of a lot of things, but I defy anybody not to remember Moses parting the Red Sea. This is one of the largest, greatest miracles we can imagine. All the same, we have to admit that the miracles wrought through the hands of Jesus by the power of God were very impressive. An important point is that Islam does not deny the fact that Jesus Christ performed miracles. Islam just teaches that he performed the miracles by the will of God. And this is consistent with Jesus' statement that he of himself can do nothing. So let's look at some of the miracles that Jesus is recorded as having performed. We are told that he fed thousands with a few fish and loaves of bread. All good and fine. But does that make a person divine? Elisha fed 100 people with 20 barley loaves and a few ears of corn. He granted a widow such an abundant flow of oil from a jar she had that was running dry, but as a miracle, developed such an abundant flow that she was able to pay off her debts and, in addition to paying off, save her sons from slavery and live on the profits. So, Jesus Christ is not alone in the performance of miracles that had something to do with providing sustenance. Jesus healed the lepers. Elisha healed Naaman. 2 Kings 5:7-14. For that matter, the disciples were bidden to the same service in Matthew 10:8, namely to heal the lepers. What would that make them? Jesus cured a blind man. Again, Elisha has to be weighed into the equation. He not only struck his enemies blind, but he restored vision to the blind through prayer. 2 Kings 6:17-20. Jesus raised the dead. Elijah beat him to it. Having raised 2 children from the dead in 1 Kings 17:22 and 2 Kings 4:34. And once again, the disciples were bidden to raise the dead in Matthew 10:8. Again, the question arises, what then does that make them? Jesus walked on water. If he had been around in the time of Moses, he might not have had to. He cast out devils. So did his disciples. So did the Pharisees. So did the wayward followers that are described in Matthew 7:22, who cast out demons, but who Jesus will disown. So, does performing miracles mean that a person is in any way divine? Cannot be, because we have too many from among the prophets who performed similar miracles. It is one of the reasons why James and Paul were at odds with one another. If you read James, you find a chapter that has the heading, Faith without works is dead. Faith without works is dead. Faith is not sufficient. Quote, you believe that there is one God, you do well. Even the demons believe and tremble. James 2:19. A more modern way of saying that might be, you believe in God, so what? Even Satan believes and fears him. What's the difference between you and him? The difference between the righteous and the unrighteous is not only in their belief, it is in their deeds. A righteous man might believe in God. Satan also believes in God, but the righteous man performs the works to support his belief, to testify to his righteousness. James again, quote, a man is justified by faith. No, that's not what he said. A man is justified by works, and not by faith only. That's what he said. James 2:24. Why? Because, quote, for as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also.
Terima kasih ya yang sudah tonton video ini sampai habis. Jangan lupa untuk share video ini jika merasa video ini bermanfaat. Cek dan share juga video-video kami yang lainnya ya.